Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We begin in the name of Allah, all praise and glory be to Allah, and may His finest peace and blessings be upon His messenger Muhammad. Welcome back everyone to Behind the Mimbar. This is potentially a new season because I have a new frame behind me. We want to ask Allah to reward the donor of this frame. And today, since we're being lighthearted from the beginning, we're going to learn how to get divorced. We have Dr. Ali Ahmed. Hafidhahullah. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dr. Ali Ahmed, I've been trying to get him in the chair for a long time. He has completed his PhD in Islamic judiciary, qada, and he has a special focus on arbitration and mediation in general. May we never need it, but if we do, we're so happy that it's there. And so we wanted to take this in the direction of divorces in general and how masajid, if they must, facilitate the divorce in the right way. But that could already be getting ahead of ourselves because we don't want to bring people there in the first place. Divorce is certainly an epidemic that you are more familiar with than myself, but every person in the masjid, even if they are not a religious leader within that masjid, feels it, Sheikh. And so let's set the stage for first the importance of this subject in general. We're obviously not promoting it, but we're preparing for it.
Yeah, طيب. Jazakumullah khairan. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First, I want to thank you, Sheikh Mohammad, for inviting me and really raising an awareness to this important topic. And I would actually like to tweak the topic not to a divorce, but I would say dispute in general. Whether that is marital dispute, communal dispute, financial dispute, inheritance dispute, family dispute, because we live amongst other human beings. So there's always going to be disputes. There's disputes between husband and wife. There's disputes between brothers. There's a dispute between parents. There's even now disputes between imams and community members or board members amongst themselves, and the list goes on. So when we understand this realization that there's always going to be dispute, now the next question is, how do we resolve this dispute?
Right.
Are we going to resolve it according to what is more beneficial for me? Or are we going to resolve it based upon what is beneficial for the community, for Islam, for the Muslims?
For me in the hereafter.
For me in the hereafter. So that is actually the real question. How do we resolve our disputes? And this can be a matter of aqidah as well, depending on how a person resolves their dispute, on what they believe to be the most correct and most wise form of dispute. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent all of the prophets. One of their goals is to resolve disputes. Whether it was Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, Ya Dawood, inna ja'alnaka khalifa fil ardi fahkum bayna an-nasi bil haqqi wa la tattabi' al-hawa. O Dawood, we have made you a successor in this world. So, resolve the disputes or judge the people between the people in truth, and do not follow your desires. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also given this to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the prophets, they were not only sent to call people towards Allah, but they were also sent in the way that we know it, right? Calling people towards Allah. But actually resolving disputes according to the laws of Allah is a form of calling people.
And this is so important
Allah.
Because, of course, our religious reference point does not constitute public policy. We're minorities here. Everyone listening to my podcast is most likely in a Muslim minority nation, or at least community. And so setting it from the ground up, that this is the work of prophets, that your reference point in disputes is part of the religion. What I meant by, our views aren't public policy is that even though secularism is dominant now, and secularism by definition sections off religion from public life, you still have a duty in whatever room Allah allowed for you to opt for as a personal choice, per se, right? In legal terms, right? I personally opt to make this my reference point. Why? Because between me and Allah, my religion requires that it be my reference point. Jazakallah khair, Shaykh.
Yeah.
And you even said, subhanAllah, the ayah, judge between them in fairness, and وَلَتَّبِعِ الْهَوَى, don't follow your desires. Like, the prophets had the purest desires.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
And yet Allah is telling them, beware, you all have biases. Like, sometimes when I think of like marital disputes, anyone comes to you complaining, you may have a desire to be just that makes you hasty by not respecting the process of the reference point, right? You may have a desire, like your sense of justice.
Yeah.
Like Musa alayhi salam, when he first saw the guy getting sort of entangled with the Qibti and the Fir'auni, and immediately, right? And then the second day he's like, wait a minute, you're a troublemaker. You're starting it.
Yeah.
So initially, what our initial sense of justice could be a desire starting from the right place, sending us to a wrong place.
Yeah.
And Sheikh, if you can just speak a little bit about that, like what are, from like the ethical perspective, without the checklist, before we get into the legalities of dispute or divorce, what should a person, because what I'm trying to say, and I've already spoken too much, is that half the masajid don't have imams.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about imams for a second.
Yeah.
And yet still people come to them, listen, I got a problem, right? What should they not do, right? What should they be very careful about in terms of listening to the grievances of whomever reached them first?
Yeah. طيب, look, the Sharia, we always say that Islam is a complete way of life. How can it be a complete way of life if it doesn't have good governance? And that's why in fiqh, in the Sharia, we have a whole genre, which is as-siyasa shar'iyya, right? The concept, having, and qada falls under that genre, under that remit. So Islam has, our pious predecessors, our scholars have written books on as-siyasa shar'iyya. And in that genre, they have talked about qada. And they have talked about the adabul qada, the adabul qadi, the adabul mufti, wal mustafti, wal fatwa. And the list goes on.
So these are protocols of the person being asked and the protocols of the person asking. There's certain
requirements,
right?
The guidelines, the ethos, the procedure, what to do, what not to do, who is the ahl of such a mansab, of such a position, who is not, who should recuse themselves, when should they recuse themselves, and the list goes on.
Right.
So coming back to the religion of Islam being a complete way of life. So it teaches us how to resolve our disputes and our differences. Now, the fact that some people may be ignorant or they don't know about that doesn't mean that the Sharia has not talked about it, has not given us the guidance. And so that's why it's important that we understand the Sharia is a complete way of life, and it is applicable in every time and space. So whether we are living in the 7th century or we're living in the 21st century, whether you're living in a Muslim land or whether you are living as a minority in the non-Muslim countries, the Sharia has given you avenues in order for you to resolve your disputes according to the laws of Allah. So one might ask, okay, well, we are living as Muslim minority in America. We don't have, for example, Islamic judges. We don't have Islamic courts in order for us to resolve our disputes. How can we bring harmony between, quote unquote, the law of the land, right, and our Sharia? Well, first of all, the law of the land, actually, every single signatory to the United Resolution, which calls for arbitration, they must offer the disputant parties for arbitration according to their faith, according to their conditions.
United Resolution?
There's a resolution which requires all the signatory countries that they must offer, meaning they must not enforce the law of that country upon the disputants. Must give them an avenue to resolve
whether or not that's applied is a different issue, but as a matter of principle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
but Sheikh, before even like we get to the sort of the verdict that might be passed after due diligence, investigation, all of this, like simply the issue of what I'm thinking here, and I want you to check me or like sign off. ليس منا من خبّت امرأة على زوجها, right? Just to have the restraint. They are not among us. The Prophet ﷺ said, someone who like turns the spouse against their spouse, right? Or the default in divorce, is it sort of like a 50-50, doesn't matter, Allah's indifferent which way you go, or is there a general discouragement? These are things that I think people and even like forget this step and just skip over to just go the route of the standing civil law, right? Whatever it may be. What would you tell people who are not Islamically trained yet, who can actually arbitrate to the Islamic reference point? Bare minimums. Like, what do you do? Someone comes knocking on your door and telling you, I have this problem, right? I'm done with this spouse of mine.
So this is actually a very good question, but it's a very loaded question. So there's so many different parts to it. First of all, we live in a society in which the laws, the state laws, actually has incentives to encourage people to go ahead and get divorced. So we need to understand that when a person gets legally married, what he's actually doing, and we'll talk about the Islamic divorce and the legal divorce, but let's talk about the legal marriage and the Islamic marriage. When a person gets legally married, he's actually entering into a contract with the state.
Right.
And what is he saying? That in the case of a dispute, I will delegate the state law to resolve my disputes with my spouse.
Right.
That's what he's doing. The Islamic contract, is the Islamic nikah is also a contract, just like the legal marriage is a contract between you, between the spouses and the state. The Islamic nikah is also a contract that you and your spouse are entering into. And the obvious difference is what? The Islamic nikah, you are delegating the Sharia to go ahead and resolve any disputes, to go ahead and put roles and responsibilities for each and every spouse. Now, the state laws are designed to actually encourage divorce. There's incentives. So, for example, there's an incentive for division of assets, even if those assets don't really belong to you. So, for example, if the husband or the wife, they own more money than the other person, because the state sees that when there is a marriage, it's a union of two people
Single
into
union.
one. Right. And so when that one entity or union is going to be split, then all the assets also has to be split 50-50. So sometimes you will find that the woman will be giving, the wife will be giving half of her property to the husband.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa. And so what you are actually doing is delegating the state to interfere and to go ahead and judge in your marital dispute. And who is this judge? Who is the court system that you are going to go to? Are they of the same faith? Does the judge go to the same masjid? Do they share your reference points? Do they share the same beliefs and principles that you believe in? No, they don't. As a matter of fact, there are some judges who will say, why are you guys coming to us? You only have about 15 minutes with the judge.
Right.
And he's just going to, in a very dry way, apply the law to your situation without having taken into consideration so many other aspects.
Variables,
right? And that is a real danger.
SubhanAllah, when you said the judge does he come to the same masjid as you, I remember Dr. Salah Hassawi, Secretary General at AMJA, Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America. We were attending an intensive on family law with him, and one sister said to him, Sheikh, you know how, like, of course, like what's mine is mine, what's his is mine.
Very common.
So, and of course, this is not a jab at sisters at all. And I think AMJA, going back to there, I'll include it in the description of the video, they have a family code they worked on for 2 years. And I think it is so equitable that it convinces many. And because nobody wins, not the man or the woman when they go this route.
They don't.
The lawyer wins. That's who wins. But they to keep them out of that route, to going that path. And so it's very equitable on both sides, and they even sort of set up a suggested formula, perhaps, or suggested there should be a formula for the alimony or the equivalent of alimony, so that they don't have to sort of fight tooth and nail about it.
Yeah.
But as a matter of principle, to even come right to the Islamic reference point, you have to realize they have a completely different reference point. And so he was helping her do that. So when she said, you know, what's mine is mine, his is mine, he kind of sat up. He's like, sister, hold on. No one gave, women rights the way that Islam did.
Yeah.
But that
Statement
is not ours. He said, we have a slightly different statement in Islam. It's called lakum dinukum waliya din. And it was very powerful. Like, for you, your religion, for me, mine.
Yeah.
Surah Al-Kafirun. And so it's just like, whoa, that's right. He doesn't attend my masjid. He doesn't have my worldview. He doesn't believe necessarily in sort of that Allah is perfectly wise and perfectly just, and he will ask us about every letter of this Quran on the Day of Judgment. So I appreciate you pulling me back. Like, I'm trying to get to the marital dispute, said no, and you're pulling me back saying, wait a minute, the marital agreement to begin with, if we don't understand its nature, we will forever be riddled with what to do at the dispute time. So let me throw a follow-up here.
And that's why
the importance of clauses in the marital contract for when we will, right? Because the default, as you said, is it's an agreement with the state. So I'm guessing you're saying we should try our best to sort of set up a preemptive mechanism.
Yes,
right?
very good.
Clauses within our marital agreement to circumvent this unfortunate.
And that's why it's important for couples to have within their contract a prenuptial agreement, within their contract certain clauses that will ensure the Islamic rights for each one of them. If we believe that Allah is the most just, if we believe that the Sharia is the most just, if we believe that Islam wants the best for us in this dunya as well as in the akhirah, then why is it that when we dispute, we don't take Allah and His Messenger and the Sharia and the solutions that the Sharia has to offer into consideration? Why is it that أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ, that you are going to go to the secular laws, which the concept of Allah is removed from the equation. God is not there in any of that. The solutions that they are reporting, that they are actually giving to their constituents. Now, when we believe that Sharia is the solution, but we want to go ahead and have it enforced, then there are other ways. So if couples want to get married, then they can go ahead and have prenuptial agreements to ensure that everyone's assets are secured and it is still theirs when there's a dispute, when there's a divorce that happens, so that way he or she does not have access unjustly, unfairly to the other person. And they can have a clause which will say, look, when there is a dispute, we'll go to Islamic arbitration. We'll go to an Islamic judge. We'll go to an Islamic arbitrator that will help us to resolve it according to the tenets of the religion. And that, to a large degree, will be enforceable in the court of law. And this is what I was saying earlier, that even in the countries that we are living in, they are actually offering the Muslims and every other person of other faiths the opportunity to arbitrate their disputes with whomever that they choose.
It even lightens the burden on the court system, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes,
That's what I was hearing from the brothers in the UK, that one of the big selling points for having these arbitration panels, Islamic arbitration panel in the UK, is that the court system welcomed it due to their backlogs, due to the sort of the wait lists and the endless, sadly, cases. So it's not, but there's probably going to be a right way to do this. Like a prenup, I remember a lawyer was telling me, like, it looked like a man and his fiance came to me with a prenup, and her dad actually, and he said to me, "Is this good?" I was like, first of all, you should not be asking a sheikh whether the legalese, right, the legal language is like waterproof, because there's certain things here. But to me, it doesn't seem in violation of the Sharia. like it's mutual agreement, whatever
Yeah.
you guys want.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem that there's any red lines here, right?
Yeah.
It's within the domain of whatever you guys are
Yeah.
both mutually comfortable with. And then I brought it to a lawyer just for the sake of, I told him that's your job, but I still, for my own learning, I brought it to him. And he said to me that this actually means nothing unless it is signed with enough of a grace period between it and like the time they received it.
Yeah.
So they call it being conscionable, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you can easily get it dismissed later in court by
Yeah.
they only gave me 24 hours to read it, understand it, and sign it. I was like, oh my God, like how would I ever know
Yeah,
that?
there's so many legalities.
Legal
Yeah,
precedent,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
For this. And so please, if you're going to do this, don't do the right thing in the wrong
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Ask a lawyer, spend some money, get
Yeah.
some legal counsel.
Yeah.
If you think it's expensive, wait till you see what divorce costs,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that in there because I almost caused the blunder.
Yeah,
That's all I'm trying to say.
You know what you've mentioned about the court systems being backlogged and whatnot. And that's why a lot of the courts are actually saying go to mediation, go to arbitration, and they're pushing it because some of the cases are actually taking 2 years, 3 years to get finalized for the couples to go ahead and actually be free from one another. So that's from a time frame perspective.
But also money. I mean, I know current case, subhanAllah, I'm sure you know this. I just want to make sure our listeners do as well.
Yeah.
Like, because at the end of this episode, I want to have people at a point where we want to build arbitration councils or grow them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Our own, right? Sort of Islamically informed. There's one case here, just the two lawyers mediating between the two disputing ex-spouses now.
Yeah.
They've each billed the parties, respective parties, $60,000 each in mediation.
Yeah.
And if this goes to trial, that's going to triple. So like, even financially speaking, not just time, you get the best bargain out of going through a...
Yeah, I know. I knew a couple that, they had about $1 million, and this was about 25 years ago. They had about $1 million in assets, 800,000 the lawyers took, and they were each left with 100,000. So 400,000 her lawyer took,
Oof.
400,000 his lawyer took, and they were look, when husband and wife, they're going through a dispute, they're going through a divorce, just like how we make the nikah in happiness according to the Sharia, divorce أو تسريح بإحسان,
graceful separation.
separate with ihsan, in excellence, in goodness. Divorce can be a form of worship, and I know we don't see it that way. How can it be a form of worship? Just like how nikah was actually a form of worship, if you did it according to the sunnah. Divorce can be a form of worship if you follow the correct procedure. If you have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. There's a whole surah al-Talaq.
And almost every verse in the beginning ends with whoever fears Allah.
Fears
whoever,
Allah, has taqwa of Allah, has tawakkul upon Allah. Don't impede on each other's rights, and so on. And why? Taqwa, we know, is worship. You're bringing taqwa in a matter, in a human matter, in a marital matter.
Where emotions are volatile, where you feel wrong, where you want out for a reason. It's not like you're happy.
And that's why, a lot of times when couples, they come to us, they can't see any other solution. Why? Because they're just so blinded by, I want out. They're blinded by the incentive, or at least I should say the potential incentive to get out of the marriage, because they'll do their calculation. Hey, you know what? I will get the house. I will get half of the wealth. And does that really belong to you from a Sharia perspective?
So, Sheikh, can I touch that quickly, because I need to protect us from also getting a fiqh episode out of you. I know you have it in you. That's my fear. So, very high level in terms of what is a khul', what is a talaq, what is a tatliq, right? And what does that mean in terms of what justifies and what results?
Okay,
bare
very
bones.
good. So a talaq is a husband-initiated divorce in which certain conditions obviously have to be made. I'm not going to get into the
but he
differences
incurs the financial liability.
Yeah, so
because he's initiating.
Yes, very good. So he divorces his wife, right? He divorces his wife, and then there's an idda period, there's a waiting period in which technically she's still his wife, but
It's like a
he
pending
has
divorce.
a
Upon
pending
his
divorce.
pronouncing it,
Very
hopefully
good.
there's a recourse.
Yes. So there's that idda period in which he still has the opportunity to take back his wife. That's why it's haram for the wife to entertain any direct or indirect proposals if
During
within
that idda period.
during that idda period. Khul' is giving an opportunity to the wife because the husband is not living with her in goodness and he is not offering a way out for her. So she seems like she's trapped in the marriage, or she's in the limping marriage, right? كالمعلقة. So the Sharia
So she
has,
feels hung up or emotionally unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And so she wants out.
Financially,
and he's refusing to give.
He's refusing to fulfill his responsibility. And so she initiates a proceeding which is known as khul'. She applies for a khul' in which she mentions her reasoning, says, look, I'm not being provided, my rights are not being met, and the list goes on. Now, this independent scholar or Islamic judge will look at the case and take the assessment of the sister, and if she qualifies in the initial phase of that assessment that, you know what, she does have grounds for khul', then he will have to go ahead and hear the husband's side, call the husband for a meeting, so that way he gives an opportunity to see whether the allegations made against him of infidelity, of not meeting the financial requirements or the needs of the wife.
But would infidelity be sort of tatliq as opposed to the khul' where she incurs? Okay.
I'm going to get there. So now, when she is asking for a divorce, obviously there are certain ramifications, there are certain things. Just like with talaq, he has to give the mahar or fulfill the mahar to its completion.
If it's not fully paid yet.
It's not fully paid, he has to pay the remaining.
When she's initiating.
And then also provide for her for a certain period of time.
Right.
So that way, okay, all right, you know what, you've lived with her, you've had kids with her, you need to make sure that she gets back on her feet. You need to go ahead and, especially during this is called the mata'.
Which is the equivalent of alimony, of course, with Islamic
with the
definition.
Islamic definition. Yeah,
right.
Very good. So you have to provide that for her, and anything you go beyond that, right, above that rather, that's going to be from your goodness. Now with khul', because she wants out, we have to look, the qadi has to look why she wants out. Is it for a legitimate reason? Is it for a reason in which he was at fault for the breakdown of the marriage? Or was it her fault or a gray area in which things can't be really confirmed? Right? It's 50-50. If it is his fault.
So significant, but she can't really prove it, she can apply for a khul'. That's not like getting it imposed on his head against his will. Or if it is not very significant, but she finds it unbearable, like I'm not attracted to him any longer, or something like this. I fear for myself.
So she returns back the mahar.
She'll incur the financial responsibility of the mahar only.
Yes. But here's the condition, though. He has to agree to it.
According to some madhabs. So what Amjad did, and that doesn't end the discussion at all, and they recognize that, is that sort of through arbitration, they chose the opinion. Again, this is pros and cons to sort of avoid the reality that there's no arbitration counsel that's going to help them, and so they're going to go to the court route and spend $800,000, right? So they chose the opinion that she may have it so long as...
who is going to give it to her?
Yeah, so
that's the thing. Right?
There's going to be a process. She's not going to walk out of her house.
Yes. We're not. So we're not going to go into
their logic was, just so I justify them and they don't beat me up. Their logic was that, number one, we have to give her sort of like somewhat of a coherent process.
Yeah.
And number two is that if we set the permission on the husband, then he's the one actually divorcing, not her. And therefore, they'll set it at the arbitration council.
Yeah. So
they'll refer it to them.
Yeah. So
you are entitled. Between you and Allah, you're entitled.
Yeah. So we first have to understand in what capacity is a scholar acting in.
I actually wanted to talk about the
Yeah.
fact that no imam
Very good.
is usually
So you
trained
see
as,
how
as
there's
a
so
qadi.
many different. It's not only being trained as a qadi.
Yeah, I just want to.
But it's also having the capacity, the legitimacy,
Yeah. The influence in the
acting,
community, of course.
influence
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
community, influence amongst the
A
scholars.
lot of imams can even get run
Are
out of
the
their
scholars,
communities.
for example,
Yeah, yeah.
the scholars of Amja, do they see you as a reputable individual and they have given you their backing, even if it is just verbal, even if it is just spiritual? You know what? Go ahead, we give you like.
You seem trained
I've
well. You're
yeah,
certified,
I've
something like
approached some
that.
of the senior scholars of Amja, and I've told them about what we're doing.
project.
And you know, one of them asked me, he said, "What do you want from us?" I say, "I just need your guys' backing. I don't need financial, even though that will be good for us to take the council further. But I need your guys' backing. I need you." The legitimacy that needs, because without legitimacy, you don't want just any imam or some person, a principal of a school. I had a case in which the wife, she applied for a khula with the principal of an Islamic school.
Yeah.
Now, how can you're a man getting in between a husband and a wife?
Yeah.
Do you understand? Would you allow that?
That's
with your
actually
wife?
why, Sheikh.
Your wife is upset with you. She goes to an imam. Let's say you don't know the imam, or you know the imam but you don't respect him, or you respect him but you don't take his authority over you. Imagine the fitna and the fasad that is going to spread. The imam comes and he will get in between, because who has the highest authority? It's the husband. The husband has authority that cannot be overruled.
Easily.
It can only be overruled when certain procedures are in place, when certain conditions have been met. For example, giving him an opportunity. I know some imams, they've told me they go ahead and issue the khula within 2 or 3 weeks. Not even the courts in China. They will do that. And that is not only
Why do you
secular.
say China? Are they like the fastest?
No, I say it because they do. They're like they don't believe in God, right? So,
okay.
Right? I mean, they're not from Ahlul Kitab.
Yeah.
That was the reason,
Got
right?
it.
So they're like Buddhists, completely atheists, right? They don't believe in any.
And they
aspect.
still have a due process that's
and
more
yet
careful.
They have a due process.
Right.
To the point where they have, I think it's a 4 months or a 6 months, what they call a cooling off period. So the wife comes and applies to the courts for a divorce. The earliest appointment that they will give to her to just even hear her initial assessment is after 6 months. Why is that?
The ayah in Surah Talaq, Allah Azza wa Jal says, don't drive them out of their homes, like stay within the marital home during that pending period we spoke about. Many people don't know or may fail to appreciate. Allah says, لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ لَا تَدْرِي, you don't know. لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ يُحْدِثُ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ أَمْرًا. Perhaps Allah will cause something else to come about. So you say, I swear to God, I'm never going back. But maybe something will make you reconsider. He's the turner of the hearts.
You have no idea of how many cases we have. In which, in the first meeting, second meeting even, the wife, she is so adamant in seeking a divorce. I want out. And subhanAllah, just one case I had last week, and that case was a resumption of a case from a year ago, in which she did not approach us after the first joint meeting that we had for an entire year. Why? That's good. We don't want her to approach us. That means things are working out. So we had like an update meeting. Okay, how, alhamdulillah, he's back. He got back to his senses. I got back to my senses. We're living together. Yes, of course, we have challenges. We need to work on it. Things are good. So when you send them away, let's say for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and you tell them, look, you need to go ahead and seek counseling. You need to seek therapy. Divorce is not the answer, because tomorrow if you get married to someone else, the same challenges, marital challenges, are going to be there. So you have to learn how to deal with those challenges rather than going to the only thing that is incentivized or encouraged by the society. I was looking at one billboard and they were saying, get a divorce for $500. And there was another advertisement I saw, I think it was online. It says, or maybe this was a joke, to be honest, buy one divorce, get the second one half off. You see, we're living in this type of a society in which they're actually encouraging it, whether it's from the legal avenue or whether it's from the lawyers,
Right.
in which there are, they will tell the wife, apply for a restraining order, do not speak with him, cut off all communication, call the police and say he has done this and this. You know why they do that? Because they don't want you to communicating, and they want all the information to come through them. And who knows, if they're not ethical, that they will go ahead and fabricate a whole bunch of scenarios and say, no, you guys should not be reconciling. Because if you reconcile, it's actually coming at the expense of the lawyers. So coming back to what I was saying, when the wife applies for a khul, the imam, the scholar, needs to understand his position.
Yeah.
At this stage, you're a Muslim. You're a person who's going to bring about a potential reconciliation. You bring him over, you listen to his side, try to bring about reconciliation between them and say, look, you guys have clearly some challenges, seek outside help, seek marital counseling, and so on. But when the issue persists and the wife says, I want a talaq, you as an imam, as a scholar, do you have that authority to issue the wife a talaq especially when the husband is refusing it? Because he's the husband. He has the authority. Imagine if her father says, I give you talaq, and which means that after the husband, the father has the highest authority, right? The highest authority over the wife, who was the wali of his daughter during the nikah, who gave her away in marriage, yet he doesn't have that authority. So we have cases in which a school principal, a masjid imam, will issue a khul or a talaq on behalf of the husband, and she goes and she marries someone else while he is still claiming her.
Yes.
As my wife.
So, Sheikh, forgive me. I need to save my back. They always say it's not about you. You're the interviewer. Yeah. But I want to make sure no one walked away from what I said with thinking that there's any sort of disagreement here on this issue, because what you're saying is like so sensitive, so important. Yeah. So maybe with a roundabout way, the reason I asked for the different ways to make a divorce is to establish the fact that some people that are issuing these divorces don't even know the difference, right? Mm-hmm. And so just to rehash it, someone is about to divorce. Is it a man or a woman? If it's a man, sort of he has that. We're not saying it's encouraged, but he has that because he's the one who's going to incur the liability. If he doesn't want to and she wants to, if there's legitimate reasons, it would be halal. She's not going to walk out of this, sort of like unilaterally do this, but she would incur the liability. And that's from the genius of the Sharia, because you can imagine, hypothetically, someone puts in financial sort of investment, and the next morning someone says, no, I had cold feet and I'm out. And then he's like 50K in the red or 100K in the red. That doesn't. So whoever sort of opts for it has the financial liability. Of course, legitimacy, of course, due process. Now, let's say you said it's a gray area or she can't prove substantial harm, right? What if she can't prove substantial harm? Just that last part of the three prong.
Okay.
When is, not by who's doing it, but when is tatliq? A court imposed
I was
divorce.
going to come to that, yes. Very good question.
Court, of course, we're playing court.
Yeah.
Like some of us as scholars, not me, are playing court.
Yeah.
When would the court, the office of the court, have the right to?
We could say the adjudicator, for example.
The adjudicator, beautiful. Yeah. If viewers know what that means. It's the adjudicator.
Yeah,
I mean,
someone who's acting
presiding over as a referee, a judge.
Yeah.
When would they hypothetically divorce the man from his wife?
Yes.
And against his will, without him sort of, while he still has financial liability.
Yeah, okay.
That's the idea.
Okay.
What kind of cases would that be warranted?
Okay, very good. So coming back again, the khul. So he agrees, she agrees with the compensation. He agrees to give it based upon the compensation. This is a fairly
simple process.
Simple one. I would say out of the 900 cases that I have dealt with, I've only come across maybe 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
Which means what? They're not simple.
They're usually contested.
Usually very contested, very, disputed and so on. What happens when it's the gray area? Or we could say, yeah, okay, it's the gray area. And he's refusing to give her a divorce. But she is insistent upon it. Now, is the Sharia... remember, we said the Sharia has a solution. So he must have a solution. Otherwise, she will be binded to that marriage forever. And there's no way out for her.
And that's a different religion. So a certain religion has that, but we don't have that.
Yeah.
Orthodox Christians in Egypt and elsewhere,
they still have
they have no divorce. I'm not sure if they overturned it. There was conversations. But anyway, back to us.
Yeah. So now, what is the solution? Again, the solution is there has to be a process in place, right? You always go with the sulh first. You always try to encourage him. You always try to encourage her. Look, there's kids involved. There is financial harm that is involved. You guys both need to come up with an amicable agreement in which, brother, you will agree to this amount. Sister, you will go ahead and agree to this amount. Both of you go your separate ways. When there is that type of an agreement, whatever they agree amicably, they can go ahead and carry that out. This is going to take some time.
Sheikh, I just mean authority-wise, right?
Because
we're building up to it.
I'm coming there.
Does anyone have the right to say, in this scenario, I'm not engaging this conversation?
But see, you have to give sulh
for sure
a chance.
Of course.
When you give sulh a chance, and then it will become much more clear to you, hey, you know what? During this 6 months, during this 1 year, remember I talked about the gray area. Now it became much more evident to me that it's actually him at fault. Or no, she was nashiz. She was at fault because now I am bringing, as a third party, which they both have appointed me to resolve their disputes, but me as a third party, I'm giving them each a solution and they're not carrying it out. It has become very clear to me that she is using, for example, this is just an example, the children as a weapon against them, right? Because he doesn't want to give a khul. We have to also remember this. Yes, she may be suffering in that marriage. But now she is going to cause much more suffering to her kids as well as to the husband. By what? By restricting his access to the children, by preventing him from seeing the children, by imposing all kinds of stuff through the courts in which now she is interfering with his rights. And we know in the Sharia, la darar wa la dirar, there's no harm and there's no reciprocating of harm. So just because he is putting harm on you does not give you the right to harm him. You can lift that harm, but there's a process involved. So we have to look at it. Okay, he is at fault for the breakdown of the marriage. But if we were to proceed hastily, how is that going to affect him? How is that going to affect the children? How is that going to affect her? Put in places those mechanisms so that way post-khul' there is not that much harm, or there is a reduction of harm, or at least you, and plus you don't want others to use you, whether it's the husband or the wife, to use you or to use the religion in order for them to benefit from this khul'. This is wrong. People will use the legal system so that way they can go ahead and take whatever is financially beneficial for them.
Through
and
that
then,
system.
Through that
Then
system.
come to you to get some
and then-
religious language as well.
Exactly. You can't play those two systems. Let's say at the end, everything is made clear to you. He is at fault. He is really not interested in saving the marriage. He is claiming it, but he's not interested in saving the marriage. And he is not giving her a divorce. All of this is going to take some time. So it's not going to happen in 1 or 2 weeks. After, let's say, 6 months, when it has been made clear to you, then you can issue what is known as fasakh. Based upon what authority? Based upon your authority that both of them has been engaging with you from the very beginning and has appointed you as an adjudicator. And the fact that you have a position, a standing in the Muslim community in America or in your state or in your community, that this is the to-go person for marital disputes to be resolved and financial disputes and so on. Only then can you issue a fasakh despite him not agreeing to it. So I hope now it's clear.
No, I want all of our viewers, because a lot of those who benefit from these episodes and they share with me that they are like in the ecosystem of masajid, not necessarily the imam of the masjid, right? And so, as you put it wonderfully, Jazakallah khairan, that by virtue of the fact that you're Islamically trained on this system, right? And you're recognized as the entity that has put in the work, right, to investigate at a reasonable pace and all of this. This automatically lets everyone know that, okay, if you're not sort of doing this due process, you're out.
Yeah.
Don't, do this.
A lot of the imam, look, they don't have the bandwidth either.
Right, no,
they're
I'm
so
talking
busy
about
in their masjid.
non-imams, right? And then if you do have the Islamic training, including the judiciary, because I know, for example, you just trained, you were telling me a few weeks ago at the Philippines, like a few hundred imams. These are imams. Like
they were judges and Islamic lawyers. So they had a peace agreement, right? This was a very volatile region. So they came up with the peace agreement. Look, we will give you your Sharia course. We will allow you to rule yourselves according to the Sharia.
So they're getting professional development.
Yes,
I'm talking about imams who don't even have professional development. Can you imagine?
Yes,
so we're building up to a notion of, oh man, even if I had an imam that was professionally developed in qada and judiciary and adjudication, then does he have the time and does he have the clout in the community to pull this off? I mean, we always hear about, for those that may wonder why I'm sort of harping on this, imams who their credit in the community is burned over sort of foul players who came to him for help and then reacted in these crazy backlash ways, right? I mean, I've had, not for divorce in particular, but I had people in another masjid, not this one, interrupt my khutbah. Right, like come out and sort of shout me down. I'm like, guy, I just came from the airport. Like
I know of an imam.
I'm not even from here.
He got fired because he facilitated the khul between a husband and wife. And you see, that kind of backlash is actually very unnecessary. Let's say he was wrong, which is a possibility that he is wrong, right? He may be right. There's he got fired because the person was the president of the masjid.
Right.
But there's a due process for him to show his grievances as well. Get other senior imams of the community and say, this is what has happened. And if it is proven that actually, no, the imam was right, then you need to accept that. And if it is proven that actually you are right, then you owe him that compensation. So it's important that, look, the imams are given the independence that, because a judge is actually independent. He's independent of influence, he's independent of financial means, and the list goes on. If the imam is going to be acting in the capacity as an adjudicator, he cannot have a conflict of interest. Meaning, if he's involved in a institution or a masjid, or an organization, and those people are actually, he's a part of a dispute. He has to go ahead and, take a backseat and allow someone else to go. So there has to be clear non-existence of conflict of interest, and there has to be competence, there has to be knowledge, there has to be seniority, there has to be and this is one of the most important, there has to be a panel of scholars. especially something that is affecting the community and that is affecting a family. Because how can you have one person making a decision for the dissolution of a marriage that has so many kids? Just like, for example, at Amja, no one scholar is making or giving a fatwa that is affecting the entire America.
Collective ijtihad.
There has to be that. Likewise, when your authority is not being recognized, when your authority is actually less than that of a qadi, which has been appointed by Waliul Amr in a Muslim country, right? Because we are appointed by who? We are appointed by the Muslim scholars, Ahlul Halli wal Aqd. We are appointed by the Muslim community, but that does not reach to the level of strength that is required by a Waliul Amr.
And that's the message to the imams, that the imams need to understand we're operating in almost like daruri circumstances.
Yeah.
Just because we cannot suspend and halt and put on hold all of the masalih, right? The business disputes and the marital disputes. We have, I don't want to say play qadi, even though if the camera wasn't running, I'd use that word. But we have no choice but to, like, interim be the substitute qadi because life can't move forward without it. It would be utter stagnation. You'd have decision paralysis.
All of the scholars, Imam al-Nawawi, Mawardi, the Malikis, the Hanafis, the Hanbalis, they said that if a jama'ah of the Muslims, they find themselves to be without a qadi in a country that does not have a qadi, then they can go ahead and appoint from amongst them a qadi, and that would be Islamically binding.
Right.
All of the four schools of thought.
So the imams of the masajid, we understand that they may have to serve the function of a qadi when there is no better option.
Yeah.
But we're actually running a bit out of time now. Outsourcing it, why is that a better option?
Well, I think it will take off the burden, the load from the imams. And like I've mentioned, if there's a conflict of interest, he will not be involved or pulled in that. Also, the fact that such decisions cannot be made unilaterally. It has to be made with the panel of scholars, and that's why the Islamic Council of America, we have a panel of scholars. So the cases that come to me, I never make a decision, especially if it involves fasakh, right? If it's a khula and if the husband agrees, khalas, I'm just a facilitator. If it's a talaq and the husband wants to actually issue the talaq, I'm just facilitating, making sure that certain requirements are there. So he removes himself from the ikhtilafat of the scholars, and and I give them post talaq or post khul advice. Issues become much more complicated when there's inheritance disputes, when we actually have to make a decision. Or a judgment, I should say, or a fasakh, in which we have to make sure that I have checks and balances. So I have senior scholars looking over me. Okay, did you follow this procedure? Did I miss a procedure? And they will suggest that and say no. That's why in the panel meetings that we have, they will ask me certain questions. Okay, did this happen? Who did this? Why did they do this? Can we do this? And so once the panel of scholars are content that yes, the maslaha is actually to move forward with a annulment of the marriage, then they will issue that. And so I am off the hook as an imam, as a scholar, as a student of knowledge. I'm off the hook. Why? Because if anyone says, how dare you get involved in someone else's marriage, I will say I was not involved individually. I was actually doing this under the banner of a council that has been recognized by the senior scholars of America, and we made the decision ultimately as a panel of senior scholars. And so you are off the hook. And if the husband ever claims the wife to be his wife in the future when she does get remarried to someone else, then she can have that certificate of fasakh, that certificate of dissolution of marriage, which is backed by the scholars, and then he can't really claim her as his wife. So I think it's important, and it's actually advantageous. Not that we want those cases, because actually we are very busy, alhamdulillah. Again, this is one of those times when you say alhamdulillah, not
ala
because
kulli hal.
ala kulli hal, right? But we are busy, and we do request the imams and the scholars to take precautions And if they're interested in really getting that training, by the way, we are interested in training our imams here in America.
Yeah, Sheikh, what I'm hearing from you is
Yeah.
like the imams, because we don't have judiciary training. It's just like imams, we never get trained in counseling. Like if
Yeah.
I would share with you a personal rule.
Or in da'wah, for example.
Or in street da'wah,
Yeah.
right? Or sort of like non-Muslim
Yeah.
da'wah. A lot of times we're not, because it's context specific, right? How do you speak to people in one part of the globe or another? When people have a marital dispute, I usually offer them, I tell them I offer one sit down. This sit down is taking 30 seconds max. And in that sit down,
30 seconds or 30 minutes?
I'm sorry, 30 minutes. I wish 30
I was like,
seconds.
this is fast. Track.
I'm a millennial, shit. So, and in those 30 minutes, I try to spend the bulk of it just trying to be emotionally intelligent and convincing them that counseling will exceed your expectations.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
That it's in the Quran,
Yeah.
even if our cultures may stigmatize
Yeah.
it, and it'll exceed your expectation. I
Yeah.
always tell them like
Yeah.
most of those I've tended to have like they were pretty surprised, like, oh, I never thought they would be like, what is counseling? Like, what is marital coaching? And right? And so I accept that I'm neither the judge nor the counselor, because we don't have training in either, to be honest.
Yes,
so I offer them that, and I say, and
you're
if,
a coach. Right, that's what they would call it, marital coach or advisor.
I call myself a facilitator.
Okay.
So I'll facilitate towards coaching, towards counseling, and I have like a pre-prepared post email with some of the places where they can find them. And la qaddar Allah, Allah forbid, if it hits a dead end, then this is sort of the direction of I would reference you because you are the one I know best, and the local.
You're following what Umar radiallahu anhu said. He said, رُدُّ الْخُصُومَ حَتَّى يَصْطَلِحُوا.
Yeah.
فإن مجلس القضاء or فإن فصل القضاء يورث الضغائن بين الناس, which means that turn away the disputants until they reconcile, because the sitting or the majlis, the session of qada, it's going to bring about animosity or grudges, 100%. Right? Because when you make a decision, right, as a qadi, as an adjudicator,
both will be unhappy.
Both will be unhappy.
Exactly.
Right? But at the most, we will say one will be happy and the other will not be, right? But you're right. Actually, both will be unhappy. But when you tell them to go ahead and reconcile, then they will go ahead and bring about an accommodation in which both their needs can be met without the expense of the other. And please, I know we're running out of time, but I know we gave some advice to the imams, but I would actually give advice to the couples. What you've mentioned is actually gold, and that is, if you think,
it's a famous statement in counseling. It's not mine.
Yeah.
If you think counseling is expensive, try divorce.
Try divorce.
Same thing. If you think mediation and adjudication is expensive,
not only expensive
try
for
lawyers.
you financially, but what about the kids?
Yes.
The people that suffer the most are the kids. Me as an adjudicator, when I see them both fighting and disputing, I really don't have both of their interests at heart. I'm actually looking out for those kids. If the sulh will bring about maslahah for those kids, I'm going to give it 100%.
You prioritize that above everything.
I will prioritize that. Even if both of them don't agree to it. It's like, okay, first of all, Allah has given those kids to you as an amana. They don't belong to you. They don't belong to him or her. They belong to the Muslim community. We as imams really, you're an imam, I'm an imam. When we look at some kids, we know if they come from dysfunctional or functional houses.
Absolutely.
We know how they behave in the classroom. We know how they behave in a majlis, for example, of ilm or just a halaqa. We know this person comes from a good family. Just because he's respectful towards you, but someone who's very loud, who is, not only towards you, but towards the other kids, he's a bully. Of course, I'm not generalizing it.
But there's usually something
there. There's
there.
something there. He's
it's not
seeking
an absolute,
attention.
but it's an indicant for sure.
There's an indicator. So I really request our brothers and sisters, the husbands and wife. First of all, for the husband, fear Allah. With regards to your wife, you have taken her under the covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using his name. And for the sister, have patience. Treat your husband in a way that he feels he's respected. Especially if he is the one who's the breadwinner, especially if he's the one who's taking care of you financially and so on. Both of them needs to fear Allah with regards to one another. And don't ever use, the second thing is, if you guys will ultimately divorce, please don't ever use the kids as a weapon against one another. Don't use it as a pawn. he will go ahead and use finances as a weapon against the wife. The wife will use the kids as a weapon against them. And at the end of the day, the kids are the ones who are suffering. And these kids, by the way, they don't have a tongue right now. They don't have a voice right now. But when they grow up, they're going to remember all of that. They're going to remember how their parents actually used them to abuse one another. So they're going to become parents. They're going to become adults. They're going to have kids. Who do you think they will be making dua for and against? They're going to replay all of this because now they're in that position. Wallahi, I had a case in which the wife was, and she admitted this to me, the wife was using the children against the father. The father didn't see the kids for 2 years. And that's probably, the average. Some of them have not seen them for 5 years. This father has not seen the kids for 2 years. She was complaining to me without really realizing she's giving herself up. She said, I looked at my kids' phone, and one of them had my phone number listed as MFB, mother, and then the F word, and then the B word. So mother, and then I'm like, why? He's like, because they haven't seen their father. I said, why haven't they? Because I need to ask the right questions, right? Why haven't they seen their kids? Because the father doesn't, their father. Why? Because the father doesn't want to see their kids? He said, no, because I have filed an injunction in the court that prevents him from seeing their kids. And what has that done to the kids? Deprived them of their father, and this is something that is actually turning against her. So my advice to everyone is fear Allah, both in marriage and post-marriage, during the procedure. And anything that you take which does not belong to you, whether it's the kids or money, you will never have barakah. If the husband takes, for example, money because the wife has more money than him, and the court grants it to him, you will never have barakah. And likewise with the wife. And if the husband, sometimes the husband will use the children as a weapon. For example, he says, if you ever get remarried, I will take the children. His intention is really not for the care of the children, but he wants to prevent his ex-wife from getting remarried. Right? Yes, the Sharia has allowed that. But if you are now going to use that against your wife, then you're using something that you're using your right that the Sharia has given to you as a weapon against your wife. And this is something the Sharia will not accept. So if he's saying, if you ever get remarried, I will have the kids. Now he's using the kids as a pawn. Now, what does if he's using that as a weapon against her, but he's really not interested in the kids, then who's going to make that decision? Whether she has the kids or he has the kids. It's only someone who can see it from a qada'i perspective, such cases, and he has, the training and, of course, the maslahah of the kids in the community.
Yeah, has to be Allah reward you immensely. I know you're speaking from a place of great passion because these are not theoreticals or hypotheticals for you. I know you deal with these cases day and night, and I want to echo your message one more time to the imams to educate the masses on sort of the ethos of a marriage, and may Allah bring peace to all of our homes, and the process, if the marriage needs to dissolve, then to dissolve gracefully with ihsan, as the Quran says. And then for the imams themselves to educate themselves on the qada'i process, and ideally to try to build infrastructure. It's fard kifai, right? It's a communal obligation on us to build these infrastructures or grow them outside of our masajid. I've said it in previous episodes. Many of these things we discuss behind the minbar, they are reminders that this isn't necessarily an inherently masjid function. There's an education ministry in the Muslim world, or in any world, right, that takes care of education. Just because we're here, everything's dovetailing or funneling into the masjid. And so this is usually a ministry process, getting married and getting divorced. And so ideally building that infrastructure for ourselves, for our communities, to better the process. May Allah Azza wa Jal help us with this amana. Jazakallah khair again for your time. Where can they find you?
They can find me in my house. No. They can
What
find.
time is dinner? No, so Islamic Council.
So Islamic Council of America. We're still working on the ultimate website, but the temporary website is IC America. So I, the letter I, C.
America.
America.org.
.org.
Yeah. So inshallah, we'll be
Jazakallah
working on
khairan.
the.
May they never need it, but so we're
Ameen,
happy you
ameen.
exist for those who do.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khairan. Everybody,
Jazakallah
please
khair.
include your comments and your requests for the future subjects as we start making headway in season 2. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair.